Hey everybody, welcome to yet another community event from Product People. First, a quick disclaimer for the ones that are joining us on Zoom. This is being recorded. It will end up on YouTube later on. So if you prefer not to be visible on YouTube forever, like I will be, feel free to turn your camera off. That being said, let's jump right in. Today, we have Tobias. And I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but unfortunately I can't seem to remember the correct pronunciation, so forgive me for that. But Tobias is a senior product manager from Soundcloud, and he will be taking us through hypothesis-based product management. But before we jump into that, a little bit about myself. I mean, I have to promote my own brand, and I'm kidding, of course. I'm an associate product manager with Product People. I joined back in November, so it's been a few months now. It's been an interesting journey. Before that, I worked 4 years in project management mainly, and with Product People, I've had the opportunity to work with a few cool clients like Emma, it's a mattress and sleep tech company, Omeo, travel company, and I think the one that I don't want to say most proud because you should never really play favorites, but World Health Organization related to COVID-19 is a very awesome project that I've been part of, and I'm very happy to be part of that. So that's a little bit about me. Then a little bit about us, Product People, what we do. So we're a company that tries to help other companies discover and deliver great products. We do that by onboarding fast, aligning teams, and delivering results. And that we do by getting our hands dirty. But aside from that, we do these community events where we connect ourselves and interesting speakers to a community of currently 10,000 members and growing. We just met that 10,000 member landmark, and we're super excited to see where this is taking us. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. But we want to get to know you as well. So there's a little bit of a survey here, or a little poll, and you will see a question come up in a few seconds, or two actually. And if you're on Zoom with us, if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or any of the other channels, feel free to write it in the comments. But we'd like to ask you, what would you include in your hypothesis statement as a first question? And as a second one, what do you think is the most challenging part of hypothesis-based product management? So I'll give you a few seconds just to write your answer in the chat or to fill out the form on Zoom, and then we'll look at the results. And Mansoor, just let us know when the results are in, or keep us updated. I think that
I'll give you a heads up. So far, we're still collecting some answers, and I see also answers coming in from the other platforms, so from YouTube, for example, and we'll also be sharing those. I'm interested to see what people would say about these. Tobias and myself had a quick chat about these questions previously, and we're interested to check things out. So giving everyone a few extra seconds. I see already the majority has answered here on Zoom, and then I'll share the results.
It's a good point. I haven't thought about it myself yet. Maybe I should answer. Okay, and I think the Zoom results are in. So let's see. It was a multiple choice question, so it's not going to add up to 100% what I'm going to tell you right now, but with 93% people say they would include user benefit. Tied on second place is user group or persona and business outcome. And in third place, we have feature or solution. And then cost and time frame are both in last place. Let's see if we had anything different on LinkedIn or YouTube. I think, Mansoor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're pretty much seeing the same pattern, that it's user benefit mainly in first and user group and persona in second place.
That's correct. That's the majority over there.
Awesome. And then on the second question, there we have a clear winner, which is validating the hypothesis. That's the main challenge. And then in second place, it's relying on assumptions or adjusting quickly enough, at least on Zoom. Nobody said other. So these three answers, at least in the Zoom poll, are the most challenging one, and we don't see any other topics. But Mansoor, please help me with the LinkedIn and YouTube comments.
Yeah, I see a similar pattern as well. So the A's, B's, and C's are mostly mentioned on the other platforms, especially A and B, it seems, on LinkedIn. And yeah, we don't have like a breakthrough majority, but yeah, these are the inputs so far. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for sharing, everyone. So that was a little poll and an introduction on our side. And now I'd like to hand over to Tobias to walk us through his presentation for today, which is my cue to stop sharing.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much, Pim. And first of all, wanted just to thank the opportunity for being here today to present a little bit of kind of the things that I've been working on, and something that I really like working with product that is around hypothesis and everything that is related to it. So, but first of all, I'd like to thank product people for the invitation and for giving me the space. And I think I have 20 minutes, right? So better get going. I'll also take a look at the clock here so I can control the time. Nice. So let me know when you can see my presentation.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about hypothesis-based product management, which is something that I discovered 2 to 3 years ago that changed a little bit how I perceived product and how to work in product. So maybe you will also find some benefit in the things that I'll present here as well. And yeah, I'll try to go through this very fast. Actually, there's not a lot of content here. I think that it would be very, very interesting to jump into discussion later on in Q&A and hear other perspectives and yeah, have a common conversation about hypothesis. And first of all, just a quick intro. My name is Tobias Rieth, and currently I worked in Soundcloud as a product manager, senior product manager, but I worked already on retail, banking, hospitality, other industries before. That's actually something that, to me, it's one of the most fun parts about working in product. You can just simply jump from one industry to another. Kind of the skill set is just, you're just a jack of all trades. It can fit anywhere, but it's really fun to learn about all of these different universes. And every time you jump into a maybe new challenge in your company, it's also a new opportunity to learn about a new business. So been around, but currently working at SoundCloud. This is my SoundCloud profile, if you want to find me there. And today I wanted to talk about hypothesis-based product management. And there's 2 chunks into this presentation here to spark a discussion. The first is hypothesis, what and why. And the second one is hypothesis and backlog, right? When we think about product management, project management, we always think about how we structure things in a certain way. And when I got introduced to this concept first, it was very hard for me to fit it into the ways that I was working already. So I couldn't see any possibility of making it fit. It was just very weird to me, but the idea was so interesting and I saw the reason for using it. And so that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about not only the importance, what is hypothesis, why use it, but also how to structure a backlog or a strategy around that. So that's why we have that second bullet point there. But let's start with hypothesis, with what and why, right? And I actually got an example here before jumping into the dictionary concept of hypothesis. I got an example here, something that I stumbled upon yesterday when looking into the information around the world. Obviously, COVID, right? But I found this snippet here. Fact: Omicron appears to be less severe than the Delta variant, but it should not be seen as mild. But then there's a myth, right? Omicron only causes mild diseases. This is from the World Health Organization, the regional office from Europe. And I was just like looking at it because as we were talking before, like Omicron is the current variant of Corona that we have. So I was kind of doing some research and I looked at that and I thought, maybe this is an interesting point for us to start talking about hypothesis, right? Because I wanted to do a quick mind exercise. When you look at this, I wanted you to think about which one came first, the fact or the myth? Which one do you think kind of started or kind of is the main reason for the World Health Organization to have an article that is structured like that? And I know that there's folks on YouTube and other folks here on the call, but I think this is very interesting to think about when we're thinking about hypothesis, right? I got another quote here from Washer, that is the last name. This comes from the Michigan University Health website. And the question that they were answering with this interview with this doctor, Dr. Washer, was, is Omicron really mild? And then he says, for many people, especially those who are vaccinated and otherwise healthy, Omicron does appear to have relatively mild symptoms, including upper respiratory or cold-like symptoms, like a runny nose, congestion, sneezing, and sore throat, which is relatively common, and headaches. So this is something that a health specialist is saying about the perception that people had on Omicron, this new variant, right? This came from the observation and from cultural belief that it's actually mild. So this leads me to believe that the World Health Organization was reflecting on the myth to deliver the fact, right? So it's an article like in the Q&A that they are trying to debunk this myth that Omicron only causes mild diseases. They're saying Omicron appears to be less severe than the Delta variant, but it should not be seen as mild. So they're debunking something that was presented before. That to me was very interesting because that's actually very, this is actually kind of the whole topic that I wanted to talk about today, is how you start from these simple observations or the things that are floating around and these pieces of data and these things like this myth that we're seeing here, and how we go towards the fact, right? And this is in product, I think it's very important. We see a lot of times that we have myths, right? Hey, you should do an onboarding flow as frictionless as possible. And this sometimes could be a myth, right? For your case or your company, might be something else. And then you need to pursue the truth and bring back bring back a fact that will otherwise debunk that hypothesis or maybe either confirm it, right? So that's why I thought it was hopefully not very polemic, but an interesting thing that I found on the web yesterday. Jumping now to the dictionary description of what a hypothesis is, and maybe you'll see how it fits. A hypothesis is a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. Got this from Oxford. I think it's a great dictionary. Some key parts in here, right? It's a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. So when we talk about hypothesis-based product management, we're talking about all of the things that we working in companies see floating around, these ideas, these snippets of data that are today limited, but are hinting at something. And a hypothesis is something that you formulate on top of that, and you use it to pursue an investigation. So what are the main components, right, from a hypothesis? So this is kind of how normally it goes, right? If we do this, then this will happen. And this is true if causation is proved, right? So pretty much, if we put in a context of an e-commerce, you could have something like, if we improve picture quality on a product page, then more users will add stuff in their cart. This is true if add to cart rates increase in the treatment group, for instance, right? So basically what we have is an assumption or an idea that will have a desired effect And then there's a KPI that corresponds into this desired effect happening or not. And this is stated in the form where you use these observations that you collected and this data that exists out there, you frame it in a way that you can either confirm if this idea or assumption works or not, or debunk it and move forward. Here, what is the idea assumption from this previous e-commerce example, right? It's to improve picture quality on the product page. The desired effect that we want is to have more users adding to their cart, right? And the KPI could be add to cart rates, and we want to see that increasing. So basically here we're stating that this is something that might work or not, and that we want to pursue to see if it's true. And then kind of stopping for a minute before moving on, looking at all of this, I think that the next question is, okay, why using hypothesis, right? Why not just to have, hey, this is the user story, improve picture quality on the product page. And as a user in an e-commerce, I want to see very good pictures so that I can make the product selection using the best information available, right? So why use hypothesis in this case? Well, to me, personally, I think that there's some advantages of using hypothesis in the context of product management. The first is that keeping it real and keeping it humble, right? And the truth is nobody knows the truth until it manifests itself. I think like we're kind of a bunch of product people here. I think that you saw in your experience once or twice something that you were expecting to happen, not happen, or the complete opposite happen. Oh, we're improving this feature because this improvement will do this and that. And then you roll it out and actually nothing happens, right? So the truth is that in product manager, it's very, very hard to predict what is going to happen. As products grow, you have more users using it, things get complex. There are so many different scenarios for things that could go either wrong or right, that's very hard to forecast and predict. Right? Using a hypothesis is keeping it humble a little bit. You state from the beginning, I mean, I'm using a hypothesis here. It's not that I know the truth, right? So I think this is interesting. It also forces you to take a scientific approach, right? It's an improvement, let's do it. And then you just do it, but then you don't know if it actually worked or not, or it's blurry signals from the data. Using hypothesis kind of forces you to be a little bit more scientific, right? Because you're trying to validate or debunk something, right? And normally a lot of the times you'll need to recur to something like an A/B test or something like that to prove causation. So it already kind of forces you into going into that a more scientific approach towards what you're trying to do. It keeps your focus on the problem as well, right? So the solution in the end, to me at least, seems more easily be discardable, right? So if it's not true and you debunk it, maybe then, hey, the problem's still there, right? There's still ways of solving it. It's just a hypothesis that got debunked. But if it's a feature that you rolled out that maybe you got a bit passionate about, maybe, okay, let's try to improve this feature. Maybe the feature is the problem. And sometimes the results will give you signals that, yeah, you should keep pursuing this, but maybe differently. But sometimes it's just something that you should discard at all. And then you just kind of fell in love with the solution and you just try to keep improving it. So the hypothesis to me seems that you're always going back to the original problem. And this is something that I added recently, actually. It's great for interfacing with business stakeholders, something that I learned in the past 6 months. Is a very good way of guiding a stakeholder relationship, somebody from business or something like that. Because you can always go back to, okay, this is a hypothesis, right? How can we test it? And then instead of just conflicting views or trying to, okay, we think that this is the priority, the other part tells us not, or there are top-down decisions that are coming in all the time, you can always deflect to, okay, but this is a hypothesis, right? We don't know if that's what's going to happen or not. Why not to frame it as a hypothesis and run an experiment to check it out? And then you can make this relationship move forward. Right. And what is a good hypothesis and what is a not so good hypothesis, right? Coming back to the concept we had, it's a supposed or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. So the good hypothesis to me has great supporting evidence around it. So there's probably a lot of data or user research, benchmark, workshops and collaborations and other things that kind of gave some solace, made it solid in a way. So the supporting evidence that we have behind this hypothesis is good, right? So we have some data that allows us to move this investigation forward. It also, a good hypothesis, normally it's very specific and enables for a specific learning, right? And I added like an inverse example here. If we release a new product, then things will go better, right? This is kind of very, very broad, right? Obviously, as product managers, we're always thinking about the MVPs and how to make things minimal, so we can keep at a steady pace progressing towards improving the product that we work on. And hypotheses a lot of times help you to do that because things become very small and specific, right? So we had that hypothesis as an example about the picture quality, right? So you can go even kind of maybe even more granular than that. Like for the first picture or something like that, you can make things very small so you can test them. And every time that you make them more specific and smaller, from my experience, it gets easier and easier to learn from these tests and from these hypotheses. And also clearly states the desired improvement, right? And this is another thing from a good hypothesis, makes you move into the direction where the metrics and the KPIs you're trying to improve are with you all the time, right? You roll out a feature and like, oh, another metric improved, it doesn't really matter, right? So in an experiment and in a hypothesis, normally you're stating from the beginning that there's a desired improvement into a certain metric that is important and you cannot escape from it. It will be either debunked or confirmed based on that desired improvement and measured versus that. A not so good hypothesis maybe is just a random idea, no supporting data, unclear improvement, and and very hard means to kind of prove causation, right? So yeah, let's try to do a new product. And then, okay, but how do you state it as a hypothesis? If we have a new product, the world will be wonderful. And then it's just like very hard to move forward from there, right? So I think that this is what to me would consolidate not so good hypothesis, something random, no supporting data. You need to kind of, you don't actually know what to do with it to move forward and confirm it. And then the next step that I wanted to talk a little bit about is hypothesis and backlog, right? Because yeah, this is all great, right? So let's say that, perfect, I want to try this out. I want to look at my backlog today and think about how can I structure it around hypothesis. And then you look at kind of these weird sentences that I just showed, they are so gigantic. How do I put that in the Jira ticket, right? So they don't fit into a title of a Jira ticket, but actually in the sprints that we do today, we use user stories. How do I make these fit, right? And there's no, I think that kind of the answer that I'm going to bring here is how I normally do it, how I normally see it. But I think that everybody's free to experiment by themselves, like things that work or not. So feel free to pick up what makes sense, what doesn't. These are just some good structures that to use that I normally use, and other PMs that I coached within Soundcloud and other companies also used and found benefit on it. So this is a little bit of how a common project or team could be structured on, right? So if you have a team that has an initiative at hand, you maybe have some epics underneath it that delimitates the milestones that you have. And then you have user stories, and then you can even have tasks, subtasks, and things like that, and bugs once you roll it out. At least this is how my the stuff that I worked on looked a lot of times. So where do the hypotheses fit, right? So the initiatives normally could be problem areas that you have, right? So initiative is improving this product page, but actually there's a problem behind all of this initiative, right? So probably there's something that it's not going right. So probably there's something that you want to improve, something that users don't understand, or something that the business wants. So this is kind of where, to me, you find an equivalent from an initiative. You find that actually you have a problem that you're working on. Now, the epics could be different hypotheses on how to solve the same problem, right? You could have a hypothesis that this page is not loading fast enough, or the other hypothesis could be that because we're looking at the data, users are not finding the add to cart button fast enough, or the pictures suck. To me, those are the equivalents to epics as well. So you have like different hypotheses, and that could prove or disprove that. And to me, these are equivalent. And then on user stories, you could have actually experiments, right? In experiments about confirming or debunking hypothesis one. And then you can have 2 experiments to try the same hypothesis. Also, there's a different way of thinking about it. It could be sub-hypotheses that you can try different experiments on. But to me, it's equivalent of a user story in terms of size. It's something that the team can pick up, understands, okay, we're trying to run an experiment. What's in this experiment here? There's a behavior for the treatment group that we're creating for the experiment, and something that we can work on. Becomes very minimal, also forces you to think about the small experiments to run. So this is a way of thinking about it. And when starting, as I said, right, the initiative problem area, to me, it's always about starting with the problem, right? And something that I think, as I mentioned, as one of the benefits that I see from working with hypothesis, is that you'll be going back to this problem very frequently. It's not that you're going to start building the designs and it's going to be so great that kind of the problem gets secondary. No, you're going to go back to this all the time. So it's very important that you actually think that the problem that you have at hand is a real problem. Because a lot of times, maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's just something that it's happening in a certain way that not actually translates to a problem, what a problem actually means, right? And if it is a problem, how does it rank with the other problems that you might want to solve, right? So to me, always kind of spending a lot of time looking at the problem is key to enabling all the rest when working with hypothesis, right? So let's say, for instance, edge to cart rates are dropping. It's kind of the initial problem that we have. How can we challenge this problem, right? Is this a real problem that we have today? Is this the biggest problem that we have at the moment? Edge to cart rates dropping is a business problem, right? What is in it for the users, right? Maybe if you interview the users, they are just kind of thinking something completely different. And how are you going to actually do something that improves their lives, right? What do we know about this problem so far? What is the data that we have? What solving this problem means? What success looks like, right? We're going to a certain level. We want to have 100% of the users getting to this page, adding products to the cart. What does success looks like when you solve this problem? And the answer to that is data, of course. So you'll be looking into all of the research that you've done, going back to it, finding more research, benchmarking other platforms, which are a great way of also thinking of hypothesis. And you just go into a competitor and okay, how do they solve their problem? And then you see, if you start kind of doing it time after time, you'll start using platforms, benchmark them. Oh, I think that they had this hypothesis, and then either they confirmed or debunked it. You kind of start to see the hypothesis that the other products might have had in the past. It's very interesting. I added this just now. I just kind of got this insight, by the way. So that's why I maybe felt a bit clumsy when I was explaining it. Anyway, moving on, you also will look into the data, right? What are the funnels telling you? What is the data? How retention does look like? What are users doing that works? The users that add stuff to the cart, what are they doing that the other ones that are not doing it do? What are the user segments that you have? Do you have differences by screen size, by country, etc.? So data, it's what's going to help you challenge this problem in the end. And always remember about the fuel for good hypothesis, right? All of this data will come in handy later on when you're formulating these hypotheses, because they are the foundation for making hypothesis that will actually help you get somewhere. And then if you are very sure about the problem that you have, the next question is how to come up with good hypotheses and experiments, right? And there's multiple ways to come up with hypotheses and experiments. All of the different design thinking techniques that you are thinking about, all the brainstorm techniques apply. I'll talk about this one here specifically that we use frequently on SoundCloud. But to me, there's always like a golden rule, right? It's collaborate. When you're talking about hypothesis, it's very important to get as much folks from the org involved from the jump to discuss this problem and what are the main hypotheses. When you invite somebody from marketing, they're coming with a marketing brain, thinking about things that you probably were not even thinking about, that, oh yeah, this might be a solution for it. So making it collaborative, inviting folks from all over the org to help out engineering, marketing, strategy teams, legal teams. Great to brainstorm with legal teams. Sometimes, oh yeah, we cannot do this. This is a legal barrier. And they will say, oh, actually you could just like move around it like that. Anyway, collaborate, invite folks from your org that will help into brainstorming this through different perspectives. And the tool that I use a lot is actually design sprints, right? Design sprints are actually very straightforward for that. When you're on Monday and you're mapping, you're talking about problem and the possible hypotheses that exist, and you're kind of enriching that problem with more data and with more brainstorming on the hypothesis of why, so you can pursue even more data. And then on Tuesday, you're looking at even more hypotheses, more granular ones perhaps, and you're already thinking about the experiments or kind of what are the different things that you can try. And then when you're going for tests, it's all about causation, right? It's very, I would say it's very hard for you to do a design sprint where in the end you will kind of run an A/B test, right? But it's possible, right? So you can adjust this format. Maybe you have Friday like in the week after, so you have a week of coding, so you can deploy the test. It's something that we've done actually in previous experiences. Totally doable, right? You can roll out an A/B test by the end of design sprint, no problem, if you really plan it right. And I think with that, I get to the end of my 20 minutes presentation. I think I was looking at the clock, kind of on time, I think 19 minutes or so. So that's it. I think now we go to maybe Q&A. And if I remember correctly, I need to stop sharing, right?
Yeah, because I'm taking over. Thanks, Tobias. Cool. Super interesting. Well, I'm putting on my screen again. So yeah, you're right. We're going into Q&A now, and we'll give people some time to just write some thoughts, some questions, some whatever they might want to ask in the chat on whatever platform they are. And while they're doing that, I'll just talk a little bit about product people and when it might be a good scenario to involve us in your business, in your organization. So, for example, you get some funding. You're growing quickly. You need some people on an interim basis to take on product. Hire us. We're there for you. Somebody had just had one of the biggest events in their life. They got their first, second, third, or I don't know how many children. They're on parental leave. You lost a good resource. Okay, that happens. We're here for you. You can contact us. You can hire us, and we're ready to jump in on short notice. Same with if somebody's leaving your company. Same if you need a temporary initiative where you just need to do a discovery design sprint, or you need to deliver really on something and you need some extra hands on a job on the product side. Contact us. We can hire, we can help you. And then one of the other things, which is maybe less related to getting your hands dirty, is appraising how your team is working. So we can also come in and support you and look at how your team is doing and how your product organization is set up and maybe help you improve that. So those are just a few of the cases where it might make sense to reach out to us and to hire us. And we've got actually pretty good feedback overall from different clients, and some examples are up here, which I won't let you read through right now, but later on the stream on YouTube, you can pause the video and check that. But moving a little bit into our team, we're fully remote. So we're completely on a distance. We're a very diverse team as well. So I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. Mansour is based in Cyprus. We've got people based in Berlin. We've got people based in Spain. We have some colleagues in India, and most of the team is actually, or like a large majority of the team, they're expats. So even if they're based in, like me, I'm based in Stockholm. I'm not from Sweden. I'm Dutch. I'm from the Netherlands. We're a super diverse team. Yeah, and I mean that's all I can say about it. But we are legally registered in Berlin. So legally we're based in Berlin, but the team is from everywhere and based everywhere. And we're actually growing. We're hiring product managers on all levels, from associate like me, all the way up to senior product managers. So we need more hands on the job. We need more people to to come and join us and make our family a little bit bigger and even more fun. And aside from that, we're also looking for a senior business development manager. Those are just a few of the positions that we have outstanding right now. If you want to check all of them, just go to productpeople.join.com and you can see everything that we have. And that's it for my little chat. So let's see, Mansoor, if we have any questions. And
we've got someone raising their hand here, so let's start with them maybe. Sudish, feel free to speak.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Tobias, for sharing the presentation and your thoughts as well. So my name is Sudish. I work in product analytics and work with product managers quite closely as well. So what I wanted to understand with you, you mentioned about creating epics. So hypotheses can have epic and how they can evolve over a period of time. How would you say something about metrics as well? And how should they evolve over time? And experience, if you can give an example of a situation where you did that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a great question and a very, very interesting topic. Normally, when you start looking at these kind of hypothesis-based product management and you start looking at finding causation, it's very important to get data very close, right? And also not only be able to, okay, this actually happened, causation is proved through A/B testing or something like that, but actually think about the metric that actually better represents success for a problem, right? A lot of times, like the example that we used, add to cart rates might be an interesting piece of evidence that it's kind of leading you towards an issue that you might want to solve, but actually might not represent actual metric that you need to improve, right? So then it starts a process of kind of actually trying to go through all of the metrics and the information that flows from all over the place from your product and try to find the most important one and the one that you need to optimize. And this kind of I don't have a name for it. I call it KPI science. I think it's very important also when you're kind of kicking off any new project or something like that. What is actually something that you need to improve, right? And depends on the product, the problem at hand, what you're trying to do. But something that I can share that not only we've done, but all major platforms done, there's a lot of articles out there, is to try to find a proxy metric for something that you want to improve, right? So all of these major KPIs that you have in your company, like monthly active users, conversion rates, they're always, sometimes they can be easily used for an experiment, but sometimes they're far away, right? Sometimes it's very hard to know. With that, you start to kind of do what these other platforms also done. Okay, what are the proxy that users show? What are the proxy behaviors that users show that proves that there's causation on the behavior or the metric that we want to improve? So in a way, you're using predictive models and data science to figure out from all of the behaviors that users express in a time frame, what is the most important one that they do that actually predicts what you want to improve. And then you work on ideas to improve that proxy metric. And this is something that Netflix done, Facebook also done as well, Slack, other companies like that, rely a lot on proxy metrics and kind of trying to find kind of metrics that won't change, that you can experiment once, twice on the same metric and have comparable results because they're actually mean something. And this all starts when you're kind of kicking off something new, when you have a new problem at hand and you're pretty sure that this is a problem that needs to be solved. And now you think about a metric that actually signifies success. If you're solving this, what are the proxy metrics? And then data comes in clutch, because the models that you need to use a lot of times are very sophisticated, and only data scientists and very experienced data folks can actually perform that. Hopefully I answered the question. Felt that I ramble a lot on the topic, but something that I maybe, hopefully answered the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking the question, and thanks, Tobias, for answering. We got another actually quite a few that are coming in, and it seems like they're increasing in speed. So let's see how many we can pick up. So there is one here from a LinkedIn user, and they're asking, how do you manage which good hypothesis you will prioritize to not consume engineering resources? And the second question, as this is a hypothesis, we don't know if the outcome will achieve the desired results, correct?
Can you repeat the first and the second question again?
Sure.
Sorry, I was trying to find it in the chat here, but I remember that as a YouTube also happening. Sorry.
Yeah, we have two screens. One is for LinkedIn and YouTube comments to capture that. Good.
My bad.
So the first question is, how do you manage which good resources you will, or which good hypotheses you will prioritize to not consume engineering resources? So let's start with that one.
That's a great question. There's a lot of hypotheses that kind of the answers lie within the data out there already, right? So if you have a hypothesis around a behavior for a certain user doing something, and you think it's because of some reason, there are ways of kind of digging into the data today. And once again, I'm going to bring back data and data scientists working closely with product to debunk or confirm them into the not even having to touch code, right? Something that you don't even need to expend any time to confirm or debug. We've done that actually. This is something that we do quite a lot. And interestingly enough, happens a lot of time with bugs, right? You have a bug that it's doing something and then you're, oh, weird. And then, oh, we should fix it. But then you also acknowledge that, okay, this bug was doing something, right? And maybe it was blocking a user from getting from one screen to another. The button wasn't appearing. Then what you can do is actually, and this is a specific maybe situation that we face from time to time. You can just like find, okay, there's two different user groups that were kind of using the app at the same time, but some of them were getting the bug, the others, they weren't getting the bug. So you can analyze those two data sets and see how the behaviors change. And maybe even like with finding bugs, you can find answers to hypotheses that you might have, or maybe even new hypotheses based on the bug that you found that you can debunk. But for the question that you asked, a lot of hypotheses can be debunked, not even with needs to roll out an experiment. And then you can then focus on doing other things with the learnings from it. Definitely, it's the case.
I hope that answered the question. I mean, we can't unfortunately ask LinkedIn users immediately unless they pop up later, but yeah, thanks for the insight. Second question we had is Mauro from YouTube. He's curious to know your thoughts about Maze for testing and collecting user feedback.
Means for testing and collecting user feedback.
It says Maze with a capital M. So are you sure?
Maze.
Yeah.
Cool. Maze for testing. I don't know if I've heard that expression before, but I can talk about the how do we normally collect user feedback. There's thousands of ways. And when you worked in companies, you probably will have folks that are dedicated to user research, that are talking with users, interviewing them, picking up prototypes and testing and gathering the feedback, and kind of bringing some learnings in. You'll probably have data folks looking into data sets and trying to bring answers, or business analysts that are looking at resources. And with the data, you'll also have some user input. And you can also use in-product features, right, to answer questions. So if you think that a user, hey, do users want to use a feature or not, is a question that you have. Why not a fake door test, right? So you just put a button there and say, start using feature A right now. The users click on it, and you maybe prompt them to answer a survey, and then you just measure intent, right? X amount of users actually clicked on it, and then we have a better idea of the intent. Well, obviously you can make a lot of users mad with that, right? So if you, hey, use the new feature, but there's no feature at all, we're just kidding. But you can do very simple MVPs actually, just to try to put something out there, see how users will use it, like filled with like problems and limitations, but this can actually bring back learnings in. Specifically to SoundCloud, just because the community is so vibrant and users love the product so much, we don't even need to, there's not a lot of effort on our end. They tell us the things that they like and the things that they don't like. So maybe it's a benefit from working on SoundCloud. But those are kind of the more mainstream ways, right? And normally when kind of companies scale, things start to get slow, and then, oh yeah, but I don't know, I don't want to do this because, you know, users might get mad with this answer. So then just to roll out a survey takes like 4 months. And this is obviously not great, especially if you're trying to move with speed, right? So I think that's something important as you get into these situations. Is there's opportunities everywhere to collect data, information, and user insights, right? If you go to open your app store from your phone and search for the app, that the product that you work in, and you start reading the reviews, probably users will be complaining about something that you can fix, or something that will fuel a hypothesis. And you can make a count and see how many users are complaining about that. Something I actually, I benchmarked this from a video from a Spotify, PM. They were testing a new type of playlist. And instead of just like doing user research, they created the playlist. They put it live for a percentage of users. And instead of having a description saying, this is the playlist X, they just added like a Google form and said, this is a new playlist we're testing. You want to give us some feedback? Click here. So it's Spotify adding a Google Form doc to a description of a playlist to gather feedback. So I think that kind of it's always trying to find these kind of smart, quick ways to gather feedback is always valuable as well. Hopefully that answered the question.
I mean, it gave me a good amount of clarity. So hopefully Mal will also add his own question also. Actually, there's one thing before we jump into another one that I'd like to ask you. So you talked a little bit about, okay, when you slow down, people are less willing to like start surveys. It takes 4 months to get a survey up and running. How do you come back from that? Like, what if you find yourself in an environment where it's very hard to get any data because there's like, I don't know, like they're not willing to pick it up. There's no speed, and there's no intent, there's no culture for it. How do you like maybe pivot that around to come to this data-driven, hypothesis-based way of working?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So hopefully it's not that you're also flying blind, right? So hopefully you have some evidence in your hand. But if it's very hard to get back evidence, something that I've done in the past is like follow, I think it's not the motto for Facebook anymore, or Meta, right? So they don't say move fast and break things anymore because it's not right. But we used to move fast and break things, right? So you're just like, okay, whatever. And then we just go downstairs and we ask people on the streets around, right? So it's like something that a colleague of mine ended up working on Nubank, which is a big fintech in Brazil. I think the biggest one in Latin America now. And they are huge now. They became like a gigantic company. But something that kind of that they still do is when they want to get some answers from users or learnings, they just go downstairs, they pick up like a school desk, they put it outside, they sit down and say, hey, we want to ask you some questions. And if you answer them, I'll give you €5. And then you're recruiting users live and asking questions about your product and getting insights. So sometimes go against the law of your own company. You're not breaking any real laws, right? Or any rules. Break the laws and kind of get the information in. And I'm pretty sure if you then present the results and if you found something very incredible, people will wonder, okay, first of all, great that you improved something. Second of all, how did you do that? And then you can express, okay, so I wasn't getting the data that I needed. So I just went downstairs and I asked a bunch of random people. 10 out of 11 said the same thing. We just fixed that, and that's how we got it. And then hopefully this also will spark a change within the organization to move faster.
Basically, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. Just talk with people in the end.
Yeah, that's usually the answer. Cool. Thanks for
another idea, because this is not the research. Very quickly on this one. Learn how to run queries sometimes is the easiest way to do it, So on the quantitative end of things, you might, okay, I want this dashboard, I want to do this. But if you know how to query just a little bit, you can just like find a data set, you export it, put it on Excel, and you do the stuff by yourself. Just a little bit of SQL can also make you move way faster. And it's not very hard to learn. Always like it. To me, I've done that like 3 years ago and it's paid off big. So something that might also be helpful.
Okay, cool. I have some homework for this weekend then. Nice. So another question we just got is actually, it's a very practical, pragmatic question. And it was, if you could share, and I don't know if this is sensitive, but if you could share an actual hypothesis you tested and walk us through a little bit how that went, like a real life example.
Like a real life example. Yeah, I think I can share one, a SoundCloud one, because it's live, because it worked out, and now I'm not telling any sensitive information. Is actually on the product, so you can go down and check by yourself. We had the hypothesis that users that share music on Instagram and stories format, more specifically, would share more if they could share a piece of the music with it, right? So today on Spotify and a lot of other products, when you want to share the music that you're listening to, you cannot, normally you cannot send the audio alongside with it, right? So there's a lot of reasons why not. There's copyright reasons, there's technical complication reasons. But we have this hypothesis, right? And SoundCloud, in the way that it's formulated, there's not a lot of kind of issues on us doing that. So our hypothesis was, if we allow users to also export a piece of audio within, when they share to Instagram, then more users will find value on sharing to Instagram and other stories formats and share more. We know this is true if the average share per user grows. That was our hypothesis. We've built an experiment that where we built the experiment where the treatment group was allowed to share, and we created an experience where we just kind of added a small bubble on top of the sharing button and letting the user know that audio was available for them to share. And we rolled that out in the treatment group, and we saw that actually more users shared when they got to share audio with it. And then we rolled out the feature, and we increased the amount of users sharing to stories. And actually, it's pretty cool, right? So users also got what they wanted in the end. So yeah, this is live for not all tracks on SoundCloud, a few of the tracks that we have, but it's a feature that is live, and we had the hypothesis, we tested, and actually proved right, and we rolled it out.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. And maybe another question that is not as pragmatic, but goes a little bit into the same direction. So Maxim on YouTube asks how to implement the structure epic problem hypothesis in the backlog. So should the backlog be a list of problems with different hypotheses inside, or how do you structure that? And maybe just connected to the last example and how you did it there might be a good way of sharing that. Just an idea.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know what you use normally for product management in terms of software. I used Epic, so it's pretty clear that I use Jira, right? And I know that Jira is also a love it, hate it. No, actually, it's not love it, hate it. It's like start hating it, and then you get used to it, and then you just accept it, and it becomes you in the end. So the good thing about Jira, the software that I use, that we use in SoundCloud, is that it's very malleable, right? So you can actually adjust it to the ways that you want to run things. So something that didn't exist before on the SoundCloud was a structure exactly to try to put experiments and kind of all of this information there. So in the end, what we did, we created like an initiative that it's like an overall arching. There's a type in Jira that it's for that I don't remember. I think it's called initiative. And the initiative was the problem that we're trying to solve. And then listed underneath this, there was all of the hypotheses that we had on how to solve this. And those are all epics. And inside of those, that would find all of the experiments that we had that we wanted to run. So that's kind of how we set up Jira. I'm sure that in other softwares, if they are as flexible, there's things that you can do as well. But it's basically how we structured in the end. Yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
Well, I think Maxim will write us if he has additional questions, of course. And but I think, yeah, like you said, love or hated relationship with Jira. not the only one. There are other tools where I think, oh, maybe, but starting to accept them over time. Let's see. So we had another good one, and I started scrolling in Zoom, and then I lost it. So that's my mistake. Let's see. Here we go. So Max is asking, how do you typically approach a failed hypothesis?
As a new hypothesis, right? So if you have something that failed, you learn something, right? So let's pick the last example that I shared. If users can share audio, they will share more to stories than they didn't, right? Let's say that kind of shares went down. And then you say, okay, the next question is interesting, but why, right? So now you have a decision. You can either just discard the experiment, or you can build new hypotheses on top of why it didn't work, right? It depends on how hungry you are into kind of learning more about a certain topic. Maybe there's data in the experiment that we can find about the performance issues of the feature because some reason kind of the performance went down to the rest of the app. And then we can have a hypothesis if users can share the pieces of audio in a faster way, then they will share more, right? So you can use the hypothesis that failed or that was debunked to try to improve it or try to see like all of the other possible explanations until you find something that works or until you had enough and then you move into a different problem, right? And this is the interesting part because it keeps you kind of moving forward with this scientific method of trying to find things that work, but also gives you a clear place or a clear explanation to why you would like to stop, right? Maybe sometimes okay, so we tried this out first, it didn't work. We tried the second time, it didn't work. Now we're looking at it, we have more and more data. Maybe there's something wrong. Now it's maybe time to step back and relook at the problem and maybe we can approach it differently, right? Instead of trying to improve something that maybe in the end won't, it's not solving anything for anyone. Something that you can also do is like all of these folks that were kind of trying out what we were doing, the folks that were in the treatment group, if they're users of your product, you probably can reach out to them, right? So why not ask directly what happened there, right? Why you didn't use? Oh, because it was not interesting to me. So the short answer is every hypothesis that fails, it will bring a learning back that you can either create a new hypothesis on top of, or may also be the signal for, depending on how many experiments you run or the learnings that you got, to say, actually, no good to pursue in here. And we know that most of the companies have more backlog items that they have engineers and product managers to do all of them. So every time that you trim down things that are not important, the better, right? So you move forward with more, a more focused future for your team and for the product that you work on.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Max, for asking the question, and thanks, Tobias, for answering.
Yeah, thanks, Tobias.
No problem.
I think we have time for maybe one more. Probably we're going to run over time a little bit, but I think it's interesting. It's a bit of a high-level question from Christoph, but how do you think you can get designers, engineers, etc., on the same page and adapt a hypothesis-driven mindset in the team? So how do you get the team on board in this approach?
Nice. And that's a great question. I think that with engineers, to me, something that is common in all engineering teams that I worked on in the past is that they want to know why they're working on something, right? So as a product manager, you're not only kind of selling things and kind of defending what you believe it's right to build to stakeholders, you also need to, in a way, sell it into the team, right? We all know that a team that kind of believes deeply in what we're working on and pushing for things probably is working in a happy environment and it's being fun and all, like we all know, right? So to me, kind of for motivating engineers is on the why, because in the end, why you're doing hypothesis-driven product management is because honestly, you don't know. Product managers are not kind of what is the word? Somebody that can predict the future and know things that will work, right? It's very, very hard. There's never 100% of confidence. You always need to try things out and see what works and learn with the user. And if you approach things from a hypothesis-based manner, you'll tell the team that, hey, we have this hypothesis here that if users do that, if we create this, then users will do that and will improve that. It's something that either can work or cannot, but we will work in a way that we're going to learn something out of it. And then from my experience, normally not only engineers buy into this idea very well, because the engineering community as a whole is very learning driven, and they always want to learn and know that the things that they're doing have impact or not. But also you'll see that kind of by approaching at a hypothesis, it's very easy to have the team also starting to generate a hypothesis as well, right? And it's something that in my teams, it happens all the time. Engineers just kind of reach out on a stand-up or on Slack and say, hey, I was thinking on this, maybe it's because of that, right? So there's a hypothesis here. And then other experiments, you can branch out different variants from the same test based on how the engineers are thinking about it, and also collaborating. With design is also an interesting point, right? Because design, we're always going back to the issue and also trying to find something that it's going to solve and delight user experience, and spend a lot of time building the designs. And then you kind of, it's very interesting when designer builds something magnificent, and then product manager and designer start to talk, and they trim down to the MVP, and then you have milestones. But with something that I found to working with design is that design and product have many similarities, and one of them is that both are very problem driven, right? So on that first bit of what is really the problem that we're trying to solve, also engaging design and try to ask the same questions and bulletproof this problem, to me, I always found this way of kind of having the design team on board, because they always want to be thinking about things that are real issues for users and trying to understand that more and more. And once you try to understand that more and more and more, and you're clear about the problem, thinking about different things that could work becomes a little bit easier. You know, hey, just let's try something different, and let's test out different things that could work, right? In any case, from experience as well, I know that there's a lot of designers that are more experimentation driven than others due to previous experience and working in places like e-commerce, where you kind of A/B test pretty much all the time. They already have a more experimentation driven, so they're already thinking about different experiments from the jump. But a way of kind of having everybody on board in the same, it's kind of starting from the problem with them and getting forward through that. So hopefully that helps out.
Sure. Yeah. Spoke too much. I'm sure it does. And I think that's the last question we'll take for today. Thanks, Tobias, for sharing your wisdom. Thanks, everybody, for the good questions. The ones we didn't get to tonight, once we'll put a link into Telegram or into the chats for Telegram. You can repost your question there, and then we'll get back to you on that, just in case we didn't get to you tonight. That being said, thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you next time. And thanks, Tobias, again for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for the invitation. It was great to be here and to chat with you tonight. Yeah, have a good one.